Got it? I got it. I don't put it in the palette. But just mark it down. That's all that matters. I'm like, I gotta go upstairs. If you see Daryl. Also, if you have to go upstairs, then I can wait. Okay. Oh, I have nothing pressing in charge now. Oh, okay. Like I have nothing pressing. I already know some of the inventory. I'm like, I don't want to do this, but not going to the session does not mean that I don't. But I have some information. I think out of all day yesterday and today, the Earth Day one is the one I most enjoyed and took most notes on. That's good. I had wrote during one session yesterday, I wrote down one thing. Not saying there aren't important things being said. I mean, really, that's but your job description is outreach, so. Yeah, it's what interests me. So well, a lot of stuff that I have to do is not exactly what interests me. It's not what you want to do. No. I know there's a bunch of stuff that I'm like, I'm just gonna listen to the recording later. I like even started getting really excited. You're not wanting to do what you're supposed to do. Maybe this morning, my son says, on Friday, can we go to Legoland? And I'm like, dude, you think that we would never take off school or work? I'm like, how did I come?
You got it figured out?
Yeah.
All right.
Yes. So you're welcome to. I can. Don't sit on it like.
So this is forward, this is back. Okay, amazing.
It'll start on. I already started it, but it doesn't go live until they're done.
Yeah. And two of the presenters are yet, so.
It's fine.
It's fine.
Whatever will be, will be. That's fine.
They said they're on their way.
You don't have any virtual.
No.
I think that is what Alexa said. Whatever session she had, they were trying to do virtual. Yeah, and it's like people online can hear them, but in the room they can't. Because they have to do like a second. Like there's like some secondary thing that they have to do. Oh, and then do you guys just have the one presentation?
One, it's like
One
four different,
PowerPoint?
one PowerPoint.
Oh,
Okay,
awesome.
Everything's in there.
That's a good thing to ask. I didn't think of that. Yeah, well, Bryce this morning said today there's like ones that have multiple PowerPoints. And I was like, oh, wait, I don't have to worry about that now. Like my session stuff. I have another one I'm doing in the afternoon. Me too. Forgot about that. Honestly, this afternoon I'm just like, it's just my presentation with Alexis. It doesn't start at 4:40. That's gonna be 4:40 or 5:30. I'm like, hey, no one's coming. B, I'm like, because you've already checked out also. He has 6 minutes. I already got it all up, so but we won't tell him that. Let him yeah.
That's all right.
Tina, you're like,
And then,
we're like, I have 2 minutes, I'm good. You're on the same.
and so each of you have just,
Hi, Alexis.
and then you'll be in charge of this one. And you guys can, I mean, the mic is mobile, so if you guys. If you feel comfortable, you can say it, as long as you've got the whole thing, you know. Hmm? Yeah, good. You're gonna. No. Yeah. Yeah, so during, there is going to be a Q&A section. There's going to be two, actually. So during that, I'll just ask. I will ask you just quickly if
Okay.
That's next to the title. Yeah, do a little bit of the screen.
And I already started it. Okay.
So if you're running over that, are you guys I'll try to.
Basically, a 5-minute card.
Yes, so what I'll do is I'll let you shoot. And I'll be like, minute card.
Okay,
And I'll
I got it.
Yeah, I was in the second yesterday. I'm trying to get on the Zoom at the same
Very good job.
The same kind of matches, so the design, I think, right, okay. And can I get started right at 10:30?
I've heard about this. One thing to go down into details on the movie. People in it. It's amazing that. This regard
Okay. Hello, hello. Good morning. It's 10:30 on the dot, so we're going to get started. We have a ton to cover, multiple presenters, and so I'm just really excited. I think this is a long time coming presentation on composting. So thank you all for being here. We have 3 presenters. So we have Milo Vela representing Big Pine Paiute tribe. And just want to acknowledge right off the bat that Greg Spratt was originally going to present, but he was not able to make it. So Milo stepped right in. But we're wishing Greg well, that he recovers, and hopefully at a future conference, he'll be able to present. So we also have Paul Hewitt from Big Pine Paiute Tribe with us, going to be speaking about the composting program there. Dion Dominguez from Pyramid Lake Paiute Tribe, and Dakota Perez from Penoliville, Pomo Nation. Got it. Okay, so the way the session's going to work out, we're going to have the 3 presenters talking about their tribe's composting programs, Q&A session after. So just save your questions until they're done. And then we'll have Dallas Isega from Cal Recycle talking about a new funding opportunity. So really excited. Let's see. Okay, so I'm Nico Anderson, Tribal Solid Waste Coordinator in Region 9, along with a colleague of mine, Jenny Stevenson, and Robert Seaman in the back. So I work primarily with tribes in California, Jenny with tribes in Nevada, and Robert in Arizona. So great. Okay, so can I get a quick show of hands of folks that either oversee directly or work for a tribe that has an active composting program? Oh, I don't like the mic. Oh, so much more comfortable without it. Okay. Okay, and I won't call on you, so no worries. One more time, just so I can get a... Okay, great. So the hope is that next year at the same time, everybody will be raising their hands. That's really, we believe strongly in composting. It's something that's within, the tribe's control most of the time. And so, we really hope that after today's presentation, you're aware of the virtues of composting and have, that are inspired by our presenters, to start a program of your own. I just want to make a quick, acknowledgement of the theme of this year's conference, which is The Land We Love. And I think that, people that compost love the land, and that, composting actually is like an act of love for the land, the water, the air, and all living creatures. So I'll let the presenters talk more about their experiences and relationship with composting. So I will stop preaching and kind of get out of the way. But I did just want to acknowledge right off the bat too that it's been a real pleasure working with some of them over the past and getting to know them over the past few weeks. So a group of amazing individuals doing the work on the ground. And so it's been a privilege to get to know you guys. So let's see. Without further ado, I'm gonna invite Milo up. Each one, they're gonna introduce themselves in their own words. And then again, if we can save questions to the question and answer portion after all 3 have presented. So that's the general structure. So Milo, come on up.
All right. Thank you, Nico. And thank you everybody for being here. Let's see, how do these work? My name is Milo Vela, and I work for the Big Pine Paiute tribe of the Owens Valley. I'm fortunate to be the garden manager there. And Paul Hewitt is here and being modest, but I would love if he would be willing to come up and share his perspectives. He has his built a lot of the piles and been a major help, but he's being modest for some reason. So I'm hoping, Paul, are you willing to join me up here? Yes, hold my hand. Thank you. All right, he's a real hero. So Paul, would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure. Manhu, everybody. Good morning. Paul Hewitt, Big Pine Paiute tribal member. Was the wastewater director for the tribe for 10 years. I just recently left the tribe, but I did a lot of work with the composting, not really understanding it, and it's pretty cool. So, but I am elected on to the environmental advisory board by my tribe for Big Pine Tribe, and then I'm the intern chairman for the Owens Valley Indian Water Commission. So, thank you everybody for being here.
And he's going to present some of the details of last year's piles, which I was not present for. But I'm going to start with a little bit of an overview of what composting is, and then talk a little bit about our plans for moving forward. And yeah, so some of our ambitions. And Greg Spratt, who I want to acknowledge, our solid waste technician, has done most of the heavy lifting here in the compost program recently. And hopefully you'll be hearing directly from him next time. So what is composting? Composting is a managed biological process that transforms organic waste materials into valuable soil amendment. And so as a garden manager, that's very important to me, trying to build up this soil health. And it's very biologically active. It's full of life. It's safe for use with food. It's very nutritious for plants. It improves soil texture, so it's easier to work with. Increases water retention, which is a big deal in our area. Again, it also diverts materials from the landfill and can sequester carbon in the soil where it's useful. So what can go into it is a wide range of biodegradable materials. So anything from your yard, food scraps, manures, and some non-toxic, most non-toxic plant-based materials like paper. I tend to be really apprehensive about mixing anything in that isn't obviously just from the earth, because we don't really know what we're adding, but you can definitely add some paper products. And you can get away with adding some like non-vegetable stuff, but there's a danger of attracting pests as soon as you're increasing or including oils or fats or grains or things like that. So that's maybe a more expert thing, and that's not where we are right now. So it's important to strive for a balance of green and brown materials. That's kind of composting shorthand. Greens tend to have more nitrogen. Browns tend to have more carbon. We'll look at a list of some of these things in a second. And they tend to also have it so that these green materials, like maybe it's like fresh lettuce or something, would also have a lot more water. Whereas something that's brown, like wood chips or something, is also going to increase air. Small things also are going to kind of increase the water and decrease the air. So it's kind of this interesting balance you can do. The whole point is that we're trying to create conditions that are conducive to life, soil life. And in that, the compost pile can actually create a whole lot of heat, which can kill dangerous pathogens and transform waste products like manure into valuable soil amendment. So in our area, we are very lucky to have lots of things on hand. There's lots of wood chips available on site. We also bring in some straw. We have irrigation water to use. There's some manure, which is mostly goats, steer, and hopefully some chickens again soon. Lots of weeds and leaves, lawn trimmings, coffee grounds. We go to this local coffee shop, which is owned by a tribal member, and pick up coffee grounds, about 10 gallons each week. And that's a really kind of fun part of the process. And diverted food scraps. So that's a big part of what we're trying to do next. Greg Spratt and I are working in our whole environmental department to figure out a plan to pilot food scraps collection throughout the reservation alongside the recycle route that he does. So this is a image of our janky little 3-bin system, which Paul tells me has been there for more than 10 years. So it actually is holding up pretty well considering. but it needs some upgrades. In any case, it's doing the job. And I just included this picture of different layers to kind of show you that I'm covering these, green materials with straw in order to keep the pests out and also create conditions that are more conducive to life. So Paul's going to talk a little bit about these larger piles that we recently made, or that they recently made last year.
So they're like, oh, well, let's start a composting. I was like, all right, I don't know what that meant. So they kind of gave me like a little list. So I involved with my community. So I went around and asked. So we did have some like fuel reduction stuff. So we got the wood chip. We have a wood chipper. We chipped a lot of wood chippings. So we used some of those. And then I went to we'd have some people with farm animals and things on the res. So I went to them and asked them for some of their manure. And then I seen a gardener, there was a little language barrier there, but I would let him know, like, he cut a couple lawns on the reservation. So I told him just the reservation grass clippings, if he could put them over to on the right picture by that other pile over there. That I told him just put the grass trippings from just the lawns on the reservations. Don't think it's like this dump site, because I didn't want to, because we didn't want to go too big, but we wanted to go big enough to really see what we're going to get out of it. And then the backhoes there, I mean, we try not to use like heavy equipment. We don't have to, but this pile being, fairly big enough to where it would be a lot of time to turn it over by yourself and things like that. So we would just like turn it and move it to a different section, take scoops, turn it. And so we layered it, and Greg did most of the work with watering it, checking the temperature, recording it, pretty much every other day or whatever it was. And I think it was pretty important. So like after we kind of started this, I went to this big composting thing, and I still don't know what the heck you could put in there or not. Like, so that food scrap program, that's going to be a challenge for Greg and Milo, because we just throw everything away, right? Like it's supposed to go in there. All right. But you could probably putting stuff in there that you're not supposed to do, like pizzas. And we have a pizza place in town, which is like one of the only places to eat in our little town. So it's like people are going to be throwing pizza in there. But things like that, and but getting involvement from the community, it does take a little bit of work, just touching base with people that do have enough. We did have some goats at the sewer pond, which recently were killed by mountain lions, but there'll be some more back over that way. They're great for vegetation removal in the sewer lagoon area for anybody that's a wastewater operator. But so other than that, I mean, just having some community involvement. You see some tribal members there as well, helping out when Greg put this out for this larger scale and of composting than just those bins that Milo had showed. We had those bins for a lot of years, and we were trying to figure it out. There was like 3 sections, and bringing leaves in and different things that I would do as the utility operator when I was there. But yeah, so I know it takes a little bit of work and a little bit of understanding. And when you have good people that show you and having community involvement, it makes things a lot easier and doable. And I think it's really good because this helps with our garden area, which I think you'll see on the next slides that we kind of created there in that area. So that's it, Milo.
Great. Thank you so much, Paul, for that inside scoop. This is one more slide that's just showing some parts of the process. And again, Greg was really taking the lead on a lot of these things. So Paul was just talking about the layering materials. There's a youth intern helping with that. There's also some turning and aerating that was happening periodically, and watering, because we do live in a very dry spot. Precipitation wise, at least. And measuring the temperature is really important. You can see that the dial here is at 142 degrees, which is pretty darn hot for just the internal metabolic temperature. And that is, one one part of the process, pretty much right after you turn it, the temperature should spike. And then once those start to cool down again, you can give it another turn. Again, that will incorporate air. You'll put in more water and eventually move toward a more finished product that can be sifted. This Greg did and took almost all day. Pretty analog approach, but yielded some really beautiful material. So here's a picture of part of our garden. This was kind of a little experimental outplanting. And I just wanted to flag, like Paul was talking about, the way that the compost really fits into our food sovereignty program, improving soil quality, which currently has pretty low soil organic matter, which you can kind of tell from the color and just the structure of it. The way that plants are growing looks like there's some nutrient deficiencies that compost, again, can help with. And because of the structure of it, it can also really increase water holding capacity, which then helps alleviate some of our irrigation challenges. And again, the effects of our hot and dry conditions with lots of sun. Okay, so just quick, wanted to give a picture of the aerial site. So the whole area in the top left corner is kind of this open space that has public access that we're thinking about expanding our compost operations in. There are a couple other details that we could return to in questions if you want. You do probably want access to water and possibly power if you're trying to have a composting operation. I wanted to just mention some of the tools we use. They're listed here. The jumpy castle is unexpected there. That's one way you could use power. Some people use what they call an aerated static pile, which basically has short bursts of air coming in from underneath at certain points in the process. And that can just help spur things along. Otherwise, like we mentioned, we do borrow some tools from the utility department, the chipper, the backhoe, trucks, trailer, again, for moving around materials. This is a picture of this year's compost pile. Again, pretty big. And, once, the operator, this was built by Justin Kinney, who was Paul's assistant last year. Now that he knew the process, he just was able to do this pretty quickly in one day. And this is just after it was watered, so it's looking kind of nice. This is it. Recently, after being covered, I'm just trying to keep weed seeds out of it because since the outside isn't getting as hot, there is some danger of, we have pepperweed and some other things in this area. So just wanting to be careful about that. But this whole area has potential, after these kind of successful seeming experiments, to do some gradual increased capacity. So we are lucky to have received a bit of funding recently as a subrecipient from CalRecycle through the California Alliance for Community Composting. So we're now looking forward to expanding that and using some of that funding also to buy things like containers to do this food scrap collecting, maybe a tumbler to do some of the processing faster, because capacity really is one of our limitations right now. And also thinking about maybe a bobcat and a aerator attachment to do windrows on a larger scale in that area. So mentioned some of those things already. I'm just going to try to breeze through. We have been thinking about maybe doing a better designated setup area for those kinds of materials that Paul was mentioning, like lawn trimmings that people might want to drop off on their own. Shade could be really helpful for a processing area, and updating the 3-bin system probably with cinder blocks, just so that the weeds can't invade from all sides and it doesn't dry out quite as fast. And thinking about maybe including worms. There's some really successful worm systems in the area. Happy to think about that more with any of you. And again, building capacity. This is a image of our newly completed job description for a part-time compost systems operator. But 5 hours a week, we were thinking maybe that's not a full job. So we're trying to figure that out. But there's lots to do. And so looking at further grant opportunities, we're really excited to see how we can, increase our diversion of materials from the landfill. And that will include community outreach and training too. So thank you all so much. And I look forward to hearing your questions and seeing what you do in the coming years. Thank you. Thank you, Paul.
Good morning, you guys. My name is Dion Dominguez, and I am a Pyramid Lake tribal member, as well as a Pyramid Lake employee for our Natural Resources Department as the assistant on the recycling coordinator. Pyramid Lake is a little different with our recycling. What we did with our recycling was we have a community garden, we have a hoop house, we have a community garden and a hoop house that is probably about 4 acres. We have a partner named Susan Albright, who is our gardener. We call her our fairy gardener. We also had a situation back in 2021 where we have Burning Man. I don't know if any of you guys have heard of Burning Man or BM, but through our reservation, we have 80,000 people coming through our one highway for about 3 weeks. It's a very eventful time to try to cross the street. But in doing so, as they go there, they also have to come back. And when they come back, they have all kinds of waste, all kinds of waste. So the tribe has tried to eliminate some of that issues by taking in their food waste. So what we had done this year, instead of just letting it go to the transfer station and the birds and all of those beautiful things eat, we went and started our own recycling food scraps. This was one of the projects that we do. We save our food, we store it, we get all our leaves, our browns, our grass cuttings. We used wood chips. We also used bark that had fallen off of the trees because those were our resources that we had. So this is what we did. In order for the Burning Man people to come back, we went and dug a 6-foot deep hole by 5. We were calling it a trench. First, what I did is I soaked the heck out of it. 5 feet is pretty big to be taking a lot of water, but it did. We put cardboard on the very bottom of it. This is how it started. Our wood, our water, cardboard. This was our first load from Burning Man. This was 114 pounds, I believe, of vegetables and fruit that was not consumed from Burning Man folks. So this was all dumped into our trench. This is what it looks like. So we did it layer by layer by layer. Susan Albright there is, again, she's our little helper. We kind of are in cahoots together. Through this process, we did try to go and save the food and take it into the tribal conference rooms and tribal offices so that they could use it or reuse it. And then it was brought back to this composting area. As somebody had said earlier today, this conference, that they don't like the paper. Well, our tribal offices have just abundance of shredded paper. So using that as one of our resources for recycling, also, we put that on the bottom to help consume some of that water, some of the juices from the vegetables and fruit. This is our pile that we use to put on that, on the 4th layer, which is more wood chips, and our soil that we just taken out. The one on the right-hand side, we just dug less than 3 weeks ago, because we do have another tribal entity, which is our food distribution. They also have food waste that they bring in, and that's probably anywhere from 40 to 60 pounds a month that we're going to put in here and do that tier all the way down. One of the reasons why we do our composting is because we help Susan Albright out with composting our soil for her herbs, her natural native plants. This is the area that we have. You really can't see it right now, but right there, that white one is our hoop house. Over in this area, that whole area over there by where the trees are at, it's about a quarter of a mile away from the river, the Truckee River, so we get some of that moisture. But other than that, this is what we have done. This is the benefits of composting, which goes back to getting all of this stuff out there and eventually having a community garden for all 3 communities. Thank you for joining me. I'm sorry it's so quick. But a trench compost is one of the things that we did to recycle all of the resources that we had at that particular time. Thank you, guys.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you for being here. My name is Dakota Perez, and I'm representing the Panelists Nation. I work for them as the water resource specialist. My presentation will go quite quick, and it's not going to touch too much on, exactly what composting is. It's going to touch a little bit more on composting, biochar, some vermicompost, and how that all can tie in together to increase and improve your soil health and quality. So I'll give you a little bit of background about myself. My name is Dakota Perez. I'm the water resource specialist for the Panelists Nation in the EPA department. And I'm 25 years old. I've been in the environmental field and in the capacity of water resource specialist for 3 years now. And I have 3 years of experience with composting, biochar, vermicomposting, and soil health in general. And just a little bit more background on some certifications: basic solar panel installation certified, firefighter type 2, S219 tactical fire operations, and fiber optics installation. I listed some of these certifications because, creating biochar, it's simple, but you want to learn how to deal with fire. And so being firefighter type 2 certified, it's kind of helped me learn how to deal with biochar, the mitigating risks. So composting, not touching down too much on the fundamentals, but the challenges that tribes have faced, that disadvantaged communities face. We lack capacity in some tribes. Some tribes don't have a lot of workers to be able to do this work. And how Milo was talking about, Greg, it took him all day to turn a compost pile. Compost piles can be very large and can be a lot of work to turn them. And so, lacking that capacity can be a problem. Funding can be an issue if tribes don't have funding to be able to get materials to build their composting bins. Location, if you work for a smaller tribe, you don't have the leisure of being able to have a whole site, designated site to be able to compost. And it gets stinky. It can, when you're getting your pile started, depending on the location, council might not like it at first. Composting knowledge, there's a lot that goes into it, learning what can go into your pile, what doesn't. We took a more simple approach in our composting piles. And we think of, if it comes from the earth, it goes back to the earth. So if it's organic material, it's going to go straight back into there. And engagement, how can tribes even get the community interested in what they're doing, and see the benefits of it? That can be a challenge too in doing outreach, because some people think, oh, compost is gross, like we don't want that, it's smelly. But when you tell them about the benefits and the amazing qualities it has for soil, they get a lot more interested. So I've listed a few low budget methods of composting. I like seeing Milo's bins. We use pallets too. We go to, say, Rayleigh's. We go to the back of Rayleigh's, look for the best pallets that we can find. And some that are missing a little bit of boards, we take apart and we rebuild them just to have a real solid base. And so you can get a few pallet bins from from the back of grocery stores. You can build bins. You collect the least damaged ones. You can remove and broken, rotten pieces from the pallet, and then once you remove them, then you can complete a whole base. You want a real solid base for your compost pile. You don't have to have one. You can have one directly in the ground. But the reason we have a real solid base is because sometimes we have to move our piles, and having pallet bin systems, they can be mobile. So I'll use a forklift to move it around whenever we need to move the site for some reason. And then you can also use open piles. If you have cylinder blocks laying around, or if anyone is willing to donate them to any of the local businesses, you can use just an open pile of compost. We use it for our sitting compost, as we're trying to get it to heat up and kill those weed seeds and all those harmful pathogens. And it's really simple, really easy to turn to. You pull the cylinder blocks back and you can turn your pile. A few helpful composting tips that I wish I knew before I got into composting, but I know now, so it helps a lot. On our composting bins, we actually have tops to kind of help keep that temperature regulated. But during rainy seasons, we take the tops off. And you want to use the weather to your advantage. During the rainy seasons, take the tops off, leave your piles open, let that get real moist. Don't let it get too oversaturated to where it won't be able to get things going and heat up. And when it gets cold, you want to tarp it, cover it, keep any weed seeds from getting into it while it's sitting and stagnant when you're not using it. And you want to get it to, at least 140 degrees to kill all those weed seeds and harmful bacteria. We have a lot of star thistle, even arundo donax seeds, things like that. We really want to make sure that we get that compost hot enough to burn those weed seeds. And vermicompost. So we do some vermicomposting as well. And why would you want to vermicompost? Why would you want to deal with worms? Well, the simple answer is worms will do the work for you. If you have kitchen scraps, on a lower composting scale, you can use vermicompost. You get 1,000 worms, which is about a pound of worms. And whenever you're done with your banana peels, your food, you can give it to them. Anything that's not meat or dairy, they'll break it down. Really, easy method of composting. It's really good for organic fertilizer. Easy way of reducing food waste going to landfills, because there's a ton that go to landfills. And it can help your seeds germinate faster. Vermicompost contains a root growth hormone within it that helps stimulate germination. And I listed the definition of vermicompost, but it's a big one to read, so I'll leave that there. And biochar. So what is biochar? Biochar is a specialized form of charcoal that is produced by heating biomass using high heat. The heat is typically between 350 degrees Celsius to 1,000 degrees Celsius in low oxygen environments. So it's a soil amendment. You typically want to combine it with vermicompost and compost if you have it available. You can even just put it in the soil and you'll start seeing the benefits right there. So biochar, the great benefits it has is it has the potential to increase growth and harvest yields. It sequesters carbon within the soil. And it's really good at water retention as well. And reduces greenhouse gas emissions because when you're doing the biochar burn, and when you do, when you have your finished material, during the burn, usually when you're burning, say, a pile, you get a lot of greenhouse gases that go into the atmosphere. But doing it the way through this, you can see how it has little to no smoke, within this kiln. Usually when you're burning a pile, you see a ton of smoke in the air quality is calling you, what's going on, but if you learn to do biochar in a good way, then you won't really have air quality bugging you. And then biochar production methods and end product. I've listed a few pictures up here. The top left, it's an open burn pit. You can just dig a hole, dig a pit, and you can extinguish it with dirt, and it'll stay burning for a little while. The problem with that is you have a little less yield because you burn a little bit more than what you want. You get it a little bit more ashy. You get less yield. It's still an effective method of creating biochar, though. And then the bottom left is the kiln burn. The kiln burn is my favorite because it's contained, it's much more controllable, and it's mobile. You can take this kiln and you can basically weed a whole area around it, and you're good to go to burn. And with the kiln burn, you get the highest potential for yield. And like I said, it's little to no smoke burn, so there's not a lot of greenhouse gases going into the atmosphere with this burn. You can do an open burn pile, which is in the bottom right picture. It's the most common method of burning. A lot of vineyards, a lot of agriculture use this type of method. If you don't have a kiln, if you don't want to build one, I've been doing open pile burns because I don't have a kiln myself. That was actually Potter Valley's kiln that they have when we did a biochar burn on their property over in 2021. But if you don't have one, you can do an open pile. You still get biochar, you get less yield, but that's fine. And then the top right is the end product. Okay, and when you're done with that, you want to combine them all. So I've done a lot of composting. We're building capacity within our garden program, within our invasive species removal program, and our native seed program. So you want to combine all of your amazing organic nutrients so you can create a nutrient-rich environment for your soil. You collect your ready vermicompost, compost, biochar, you mix them all together, and in the end, you have a nutrient-rich environment for soil. It helps with water retention greatly and improves your soil quality, and it helps with root strengthening, root development, and germination rates. And thank you. I appreciate you all for being here and for supporting this panel. And thank you all for the composting work that you're doing for your tribe.
In the interest of time, we'll have all four. No, yeah, you'll come up. All four presenters, and then we'll have a Q&A session for everyone at the very end. So take it away.
Okay, thank you, everyone. Apologies. Let me get the microphone up to my face. Where am I pointing this? Over here. Okay. Hello. Thank you. I just want to say thank you to all of the other presenters for allowing me to be part of this panel today. I was a little bit of an afterthought and a late addition, so I'm really happy to be here and talk to you about community composting for green spaces. My name is Dallas Isega. I work for Cal Recycle. I'm the manager of one of two greenhouse gas units, or greenhouse gas reduction grants units, rather, at Cal Recycle, and I'm very excited to talk with you about cycle 3 of community composting for green spaces, which opens as soon as IT posts the documents I've been giving them. So hopefully it's this week, perhaps next week, but that application will be open very, very soon. So the Community Composting for Green Spaces grant program supports community efforts to keep organic materials out of landfill, as you've been hearing these lovely boots on the ground people saying. So this program is to increase community scale composting programs, supporting green spaces. Green spaces are parks, urban farms, things like that, that you can build in your community. So this is the third cycle of the grant program, and in cycles 1 and 2, we provided 1 grant in cycle 1 and 8 grants in cycle 2, which are just now ramping up. The map on the left side of this slide, ooh, that wasn't supposed to happen, sorry, shows a map of all of those blue dots that you see are the 117 sites that were set up in community composting for green spaces cycle 1. We're very excited to see how many we add to that in cycle 2, which was just awarded earlier this year. So the program provides funding for a variety of equipment, some of which you've seen on their slides as well, which can be helpful to community composting sites. So I've tried to put an assortment of equipment pieces that you can purchase with grant funds on this slide. I have a worm composting system, which is and that supports creating worm castings, which, as Dakota was talking about, are valuable for their use in the garden. Those are an amazing soil amendment. We have an industrial pile thermometer here on the bottom left, which helps better understand how compost is going to ensure that weed seeds and pathogens are eliminated during the process. A scale can assist with weighing things like incoming materials or food produced from land application of community composting site output. So a lot of these sites are located next to a community garden or something like that, and they take the compost that's made at the community composting site, they apply it to the land at the community garden, and create lots of fresh food for the communities surrounding it. So data can be used to help tell the story of what's being accomplished at the site, like what's being kept out of the landfills and the climate benefits that are being achieved. We also have a great tumbler here, a sifter, and some bins for collection on this site also. These are all eligible grant-funded items through our program. So this is an example. This slide has a few examples of bin system sites. So these are a little bit newer than what Milo showed us, but these are also eligible grant-funded items. So some folks really like the stacking bins. It keeps doing that on its own. I'm sure it's me. Sorry, guys. Some folks really like the stacking bins, which you can see on the right-hand side. Each layer of wood can be removed one at a time to make it easier to get the material out, either when it's time to turn it or when it's time to collect your finished product. And the size of the site that can accept material from this size of site can accept material from their neighborhood and support perhaps a few local businesses like coffee shops, juice shops, or a diner where they can get coffee grounds and organic waste from the food being made. This slide shows a much larger windrow composting design. You can see that they have several different rows of compost, and they're at different stages in the process. So down on the bottom right, you can see there's like loaves of bread in the foreground, whereas there's like more finished looking compost piles in the background where folks are even sitting on one. They have a pickup program where they collect organic materials from the surrounding communities with an electric bike. It's probably a little hard to see in the back of the room, but in the top in the middle, there's a bike with a trailer. So this allows the site to collect and process a high volume of materials. And they use the compost that is produced on site primarily to support the community garden that you see in the top right. The fresh fruits and vegetables that are grown in that community garden are provided to the surrounding community. This is an example of an aerated static pile system, which Milo also brought up. And interestingly, I was just part of building an aerated static pile system last weekend. Our Cycle 2 grantee, or one of our Cycle 2 grantees, had a training weekend that some of the Cower Cycle staff attended, where we went to a site in West Sacramento and we graded land. We got a whole gravel truck dumped there and we spread gravel over a 15 by 35 pad, and we built and constructed and set up fully an aerated static pile system with about 30 or 40 people in one day. So you too can do it with the help of your community. So this is the meat and potatoes of Cycle 3. So this cycle is specifically for tribes in California. Apologies, I know Region 9 includes places that are not California, so if you're not in California, you can come talk to me about how we can start this in your state. If you are in California, I would love to talk to you more about the grant program as a whole. So it's open to qualifying tribal entities. The bottom line here is that you almost certainly are a qualifying tribal entity. We try to use this definition because it's more than just federally recognized tribes. It's more than just tribes that are on the Heritage Commission's Native American Heritage Commission list. So this is any sort of tribal governmental entity can apply for and receive these funds. And just some highlights for Cycle 3 of things that we've worked really hard to do to help tribes apply for this funding. In the past, Cower Cycle has received feedback that the limited waiver of sovereignty and consent to jurisdiction clause that is located in our terms and conditions attached to just about every grant program at Cower Cycle prohibits tribes from applying for our funds. So we've removed it for this cycle. That was a big lift. That took a lot of convincing with the lawyers. So we've also changed our indirect cost rate. So typically in our grant programs, indirect costs are anywhere from 5 to at the very most 20% of the grant. go toward indirect costs. We will meet your tribe's approved indirect cost rate in this cycle up to 40% of the grant award. So as long as you have it on paper somewhere approved by either federally approved or council approved indirect cost rate for your tribe, we will let you use that in this cycle. Additionally, there will be no cap on personnel costs. So when you're trying to hire for those positions, you can make it a full-time position, we hope. And finally, another thing that we've heard a lot of feedback from, this is definitely specific to tribes, but pretty much everybody that gets a grant from CowerCycle says, gosh, you guys could simplify reporting. So we did. I cut out a lot of things. There are things that are optional now. And it is the shortest report that we have produced yet for our grants. So thank you. I will entertain any questions about that. I'd love to tell you more about everything I've been trying to do here. So just a few more basic statistics. We have $510,000 available. You can apply for as low as $25,000 or as much as $100,000 to build your community composting site. It can be one site, it can be 2 or 3 sites. We are open to suggestion. The parameters here are that your project has to be in California and on lands that are managed, owned, stewarded by members of a tribal community. So we're also trying to be very open with what that means. It doesn't have to be on a reservation. It can be in a community where tribal people live and can create a community composting site in their neighborhood as long as they are members of a tribe with tribal support. And your project must result in the creation of new, improved, or expanded community composting sites. So just a couple of quick things I'd love to touch on is our eligible cost categories. You've been hearing about some of these things from folks. So in the top left here is a really fancy vermicomposting bin. We'd love to buy you one. Down here in kind of the middle is a 3-bin system with they have these lids that are on like hydraulic lifts, so they're really easy. You can go up and you can just push it open with like one finger. And doesn't he look super cool standing in front of it too? I love that photo. Sorry. So we will also fund education and outreach. This can look like people to come educate you about how to do compost. This can look like community outreach to educate your community on what to compost, how to compost, where to compost. We will buy you equipment. We are pretty open to what that looks like. Sifters, tumblers, forks for turning, vermicompost bins. Ask us questions. We might even make the rules different for you. Again, indirect costs up to 40% at your tribe's approved indirect rate. We'll help with permitting. Personnel can be as much of the grant as it needs to be. We will pay for tracking software that helps you create great compost as well as transportation to the composting sites, or transport of finished compost to community members, or transport of composting feedstock from community members to the community composting site. All of that is grant eligible. If you have any questions, I would love to hear them. Come find me later if we can't get to all of your questions now. There is a Community Composting for Green Spaces grant program listserv on CowerCycle's website. If you punch into this top search function listserv, you're going to get a list of like 40 different ones, but we're on there. And also we have GHG reductions at cowercycle.ca.gov is our whole group inbox for all of the GHG reductions programs at CowerCycle. Thank you guys so much for allowing me the time to be here today.
Okay, so we kind of ran up, right up to the limit here. But if there are any questions, we'd like to, and I'll be running around with the mic. And then if some of you can actually stay after a little bit, all of them have availed themselves to be resources. So I'm gonna squeeze through.
I have a question and a comment, I guess. Pam from Augustine, regarding your trench composting, what would the benefit be regarding digging a trench as opposed to just leaving it on the ground?
That's what we had at the time for resources. That was the first first thing that we could think of without letting all those vegetables and fruit go to waste. Instead of putting it on because we're still so desertly, we were afraid of fire. That was one of our big hindrances was the fire. So now when we get the trench going again and start turning it up, it should be at the very bottom. Some really good soil.
Good point. The comment that I wanted to make is regarding paper. You said you were putting paper waste in there.
Yeah.
You might want to consider the ink content because there's some inks that can be toxic.
There is inks. From what my research is, there is very little ink that can be toxic to your vegetables. We do try to keep all of our reds out, but other than that, we just use our resources instead of throwing them in. We're doing the best we can with what we have. Thank you.
Thanks, Deanne. I think that's a really, really good answer. And I would just say that as a purist, I think that's mostly coming from a gardening perspective. And again, like a community food perspective. But again, compost is also a waste management approach. And in many cases, it is the best tool that there is available for, say, soiled paper plates or things like that. And I think, yeah, also like humanure, right? Like composting toilets. I'm a big proponent of those, but you just want to be careful about how you're using the compost too. So I think that that's just the other side of the same picture. Of course, we want to be careful, but we also know that, you know, Greg is facing so much more cardboard and so many more egg cartons than he knows what to do with. So thank you.
Sorry, there's one thing that I wanted to add that I didn't add in my presentation. You know, I think it's really important to represent your tribes in a good way and to state what tribe you represent. I am representing Panelists Pomo Nation, but I'm a Yurok tribal member from Klamath, California. And I just like to add that part. And I'm really glad to see everyone, how many hands went up that are composting because, you know, it's a big job. So I appreciate all the work that you guys are doing.
One question.
I have a question. With the high temperatures of the composting piles, is there any risk of fire? It's exceeding 140. Is there any way to maybe bring in a water buffalo, not only to saturate it, but possibly put out a fire? Is that something that we have to worry about?
So typically, if you have balanced your grains and browns in a compost pile, fire is not an issue. It will reach temperatures of 140 plus degrees, and that's great actually, because while you can't stick your hand in there comfortably, it kills off that heat kills off the seeds for weed plants and different pathogens like molds and E. coli and things like that shouldn't be left over at the end of the process. So in really dry climates, there could be some concern, I think. But if you are building piles with correct percentages of inputs, feedstocks, I mean, part of composting is to keep your pile at the correct wetness also. There's a better word for that. But so like a lot of people, as you're building a pile, you're spraying it down with water and things like that. And a lot of people, part of their maintenance for their pile is to add water to it over time when we live in these really dry climates. And that was actually in one of our CCG 1, the first cycle of the grant program. Somebody built an aerated static pile system, and they didn't fully have expertise in what they were doing. So there is you put these PVC tubes underneath your pile, right? And you drill holes into it and you attach a blower fan at one end and it blows air through the system and up through your pile. But if your holes, they call it your perforation zone. If your holes go too far toward the edges, it dries out the edges of your pile, right? Because it's kind of a slope at the end. And so one thing you have to do is maintain a certain level of moisture in compost piles. And that helps facilitate the aerobic breakdown of those different pathogens and things like that and all of the organic material. So fire, that's a long answer to say fire is not typically an issue, but in certain conditions and climates, you would want to do things, you would want to have a defensible space around the area. You would want to make sure that you're wetting down your piles appropriately and having the correct maintenance for that.
Before that, can I just add one more thing, which is that, also I think with the biochar, it mentioned that this can be a brush reduction and fire reduction method, as well as a waste reduction tool. And I would just say that I've heard that most compost fires actually are in storage piles of brush or wood or mostly unbalanced compost piles. So that's the concern, and right now that's actually part of why I'm interested to deal with some of the piles that are existing on the Big Pine Paiute Tribe's garden area. I think that by composting them will actually reduce risks. So just wanted to add that. Thank you.
What is the ideal temperature for a vermiculture bin? And then what was the name of the tribe who has the kiln? Because I would like to get plans or advice on how to build a kiln for the biochar.
Yeah, I can link you in with that. In regards to the biochar, in regards to temperature of vermicompost, you typically want it between 70 and 85 degrees Fahrenheit. That is a suitable temperature for the worms where they're really comfortable. I find 75 is pretty, a good medium. But you don't want it to get too cold. You don't want it to get lower than 70 degrees because your worms get lazy and tired and stagnant. They start not wanting to clean their room, But yeah, between 70 and 85 degrees is ideal. And I can give you a card with my information, and I can talk to you a little bit more about a biochar kiln.
And unfortunately, we have to call it. Yep, we ran up
Biochar Preston, come see me later.
Yeah, so all of them have availed themselves to be resources. So if you do have questions, you can stay afterwards, meet right outside the door. Thank you all for coming. Amazing.
Who was the biochar person? Can you stick your hand up really quick?